Welcome, fellow bookworms, to TBR's Den. My name is Whitney, and today we have my August wrap-up. August was a pretty good month. I'm very pleased with what I got read. I was pretty on par. I ended up reading 18 books, so pretty typical average month. I'm averaging, around there, so that's really good for me. It is a lot of books. I had some chunky ones, some dense ones that I did finish up, which was fantastic. One of the books took me all month to read, but yeah, it was a really good month. I did participate in TBRathon, which is based on Becca at Becca Books and Bujo's TBR game. She put it on along with Chloe at Always Book. Both channels will be linked down below. That was a lot of fun. You pulled cards, and each card had 3 different prompts associated with it, and you can get points, either 1 point, 3 points, or 5 points, depending on which prompt you fulfilled. And so that was a lot of fun. I originally pulled 13, for all the numbers and then the face cards, but I did end up getting an ace, which was a host pick, and so I just added that on as extra. So I started off with 14 prompts plus my genre-a-thon, and then 7 of the books were from my TBR game, which in July I played it for July, August, and September, and so I still had 7 books left over. I got 6 of those read, so there'll still be 1 book that rolls over onto September. But yeah, I was planning on purchasing an Aurelium. September's my birthday month, so I like to kind of mood read a little bit. I still created TBR, but I create it more based on just books I'm really excited about. And so yeah, I had a big TBR, and I'm happy that I just have 1 left, so that's fantastic. And yeah, it was just a really good month. I really enjoyed participating in the readathon, and so let's go ahead and get into it. As always, I'll go over my stats, and then we'll get into the books. And so I read a total page count of 5,838 pages. They were all physical, so all 18 books were physical. I didn't have any digital and no audio. 17 were fiction, and then I had 1 nonfiction. 2 of those were rereads, and my top moods were adventurous, mysterious, and lighthearted. Genres, again, these overlap, so a book can fit multiple genres, but it had 6 mystery, 6 fantasy, 4 middle grade, 4 classic, 2 children's, which the children really should have been classified as middle grade. I'm not sure why Storygraph didn't do that, because I read 2 Nancy Drew and 2 Hardy Boys, and the Hardy Boys were classed as middle grade, and the Nancy Drew books were classed as children's, which they both should have been middle grades. But regardless, and then I had 2 science fiction, 2 romance, 1 speculative fiction, 1 LGBTQIA+, 1 magical realism, 1 young adult, 1 thriller, 1 short stories, 1 poetry, 1 literary, 1 historical, 1 crime, 1 contemporary, and 1 autobiography. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. So I always start lowest to highest. My 1-star ratings are books I have DNF'd. I don't typically rate them on like Goodreads or Storygraph, but just for my purposes in my journal, those are the 1-star reads. I did not have any of those, so I did not DNF anything. And then I had 2 2-star reads. So before we get into those, though, let's talk about the books I did not get to. So first up, I participate in Autism Reads, which is put on by Christine at An Autistic Reader. Again, channel will be linked down below. I did not get to the pick for August, and that was A Prayer for Vengeance by Leanne Schwartz. It's very, very shiny, but yeah, I wasn't able to get to this. I'm not sure. I have a ton of books to read for September, so I'm not sure if I'll get to this in September or not, but if I don't, this one and the pick for September will both just go on to October. I am definitely still planning on reading this. I ran out of time. So, and it wasn't for the readathon or anything like that. It was just extra. And so yeah, I didn't get to that one. The other one that will for sure be rolling over because it does work for my buzzword. This one would have been worth 3 points. I got it for the card 8 the 8 card, and it was supposed to be continuing a series, and that was Like a River Glorious by Ray Carson, and the buzzword was like. And so I still need to read this to fulfill buzzword. And plus, I'm just really excited. I absolutely love the first book in this series. And again, I just kind of ran out of time. So that one will be rolling over. This one is one, again, if I don't get it to it in September, I'll just put it into October. Because like I said, I just have a lot to read in September. The next one was for my ABC title challenge. This would have been worth 5 points. I pulled a queen, and it would have been a physical book. Most of my books are physical, so that made it easy. And that's Ride 'em As They Come by Rusty Tolk. This one I actually did start like September 1st. I started it. I decided to DNF this, and so I swapped it out because I still needed an R title for my challenge, and I actually already read the one I swapped it out for. This one is an autobiography of somebody who was local to my area, late 1800s, early 1900s, and it's really dense. He uses a lot of the slang, and they do have like little end notes, but I really hate going back and flipping to get the end notes. I really wish they had put it as a footnote on the bottom, and that way you didn't have to flip back. And so I read about 26 pages, and I was like, you know what? I'm just not feeling this. It's dense. I did a lot of dense reading in August, and I just don't want to read this. And so I did end up DNFing this. It's kind of a softie enough. I'm not going to get rid of it because it was kind of interesting, but I'm just not feeling it right now, so I swapped out my my R title, but this one's just done. And yeah, I didn't read it in August, so for this month it doesn't even matter. So there's that one. And then the last one, which is the last one that's actually for my game, this is for the prompt of it was a bookworm, and it is TBR in title. I actually got this prompt from Becca at Becca Books and Bujo. So this is the last one for my actual game. So this one will for sure be rolling over into September. This one only would have been 1 point. I pulled a jack, and it was name and title. And that is Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince by J.K. Rowling. I've been doing a reread of the series. I was going to read the last one, which is The Deathly Hallows, in September. Now I'm probably going to read this one, and then because again it's for my game, and so this is the last book I have to read to get a reward, which I really want. And so this one I will make sure I read in September, and then Deathly Hallows will probably go on to October if I'm being honest. But yeah, that had the TBR in title, which I love that prompt. I think Becca got it from a viewer, and then I was like, ooh, I like that, and so I put it in my game. So that's a lot of fun. And then the last one is a rollover, and we did partially read it. So this is the one I'm reading with my husband, and it's Nora Roberts' newest one, and that is Mind Games. And so yeah, we're planning on finishing this up in September. Her next one in her series, her latest series, comes out the end of November, and so obviously we want to have that one read. But we're on the final part here. So typically her romantic suspense standalones are always broken up into 3 parts, and her series have been going that way as well. And so yeah, we read the whole second part, because we had read the first part and then we read the second part in August, and so now we just have part 3 to finish. And so yeah, my husband and I are working on this one together. And so those are the books that I didn't get to or only got partially read. And now we are on to our actual reads. So this first one was only 1 point. I pulled a 7, and it was a spouse pick because I didn't really feel like doing a poll or anything like that. And that was Isabel Allende, The Stories of Eva Luna. And so this is a short story collection, and she has a book, Eva Luna, which I have not read, and I'm wondering if I might have enjoyed this one more if I had. Like I said, I only gave this 2 stars, but my problem with this one, I really enjoyed the writing of it My problem with it was very much sexualizing and romanticizing extreme age gaps with men having relationships with girls. And just that romanticizing of it was really, really off-putting. I still really liked the writing, so it was really hard because I enjoyed the writing of it, but it was the content of it that I was just like, no. And like I read some dark stuff sometimes. Um and if it's portrayed in a way like showing like this happens but this isn't okay, it doesn't bother me so much, but that they were romanticizing and all the girls in these relationships were all typically, even if they were considered women, they were still 15, 16, which I get in some cultures it's like that, but there were like extreme age gaps and these young girls, and it was just like, this is not okay. And I marked a page, and I think I would marked it just to be like, oh yeah, this one. So this one, I think the girl was like 16 initially, and her father was like governor or something like that. And anyway, there was this rebel leader or something. I don't remember what he was called. Anyway, he comes and basically attacks the town and murders all her father's men and then brutally R-words her, and just assaults her after killing her father. And again, romanticizing it. So at this point, she's older, but basically, she spent her whole life because her father was gonna kill her in order to prevent what happened to her happening. But she's like, no, father, I can handle it, and then I can get revenge for you. And so that's her father let her live, and that happened. And then all these years, she's focusing on that, and so it basically she basically falls in love with him, and it's like, no, like, and it's not even like Stockholm syndrome, it's just because she's been fantasizing about this revenge. And then she says she realized then, to her horror, that from having thought of him so long, from having savored his punishment before the fact, her emotions had made a complete circle and she had come to love him. And it's just kind of that romanticizing of these horrible acts. And then, like I said, that extreme age gap and these men, having these relations with these girls. That's what really bothered me, and that's what made it a 2-star for me. And like I said, I never read Eva Luna, and I have read Isabel Allende's, her, what is it? Eagle and Jaguar series, which is a young adult series, and really enjoyed it. And so I don't know if this was like maybe part of the character, like that character kind of romanticizes that, and so she was writing as that character. I really don't know, but it was very disturbing. I do have a couple other Isabel Allende's that I would like to read at some point, but yeah, wasn't a fan of the content in that one. Then we had our next one, which this one did get me 5 points for Team Red. And this was for the prompt. This was part of the game, and it was Bambi, and it was murder mystery. And so that was The Appeal by Janice Hallett. I'm not big on this type of mystery, and so that is part of it. This is fully mixed media, which I love. I've really enjoyed like mixed media books. I find that format really works for me, and this is full mixed media. It is all mostly emails and then some text messages. I really don't think it worked in this book's favor, because it just got so repetitive with these emails, just really repetitive, talking about this play. They're basically amateur theater performers, and you have kind of this golden family of the town, and they host these plays and such, and put them on, and then they learn, the grandparents and then their daughter is involved in the play and everything, but their daughter, so the two older people's granddaughter, gets diagnosed with a very rare form of cancer, and so they kind of start fundraising to try to help her, but there's stuff going on more like than that, and they're also still putting on this play that they decide to go ahead with this play. And so it's told, all through emails, and so it gets really repetitive about the play, really repetitive about this one main character, Isabel, her work, and she has a work friend that is part of the play as well. That gets really repetitive. She purposely leaves out, so like you have Isabel and she's talking to her work friend, and her work friend's husband, but you don't see the correspondence, like the emails and the text messages from those two at all. And so she's purposely leaving out that part, which I don't think really did the story any favors. I guess it's supposed to make it a little bit more mysterious and such, but I just don't think it did it any favors, and I just bored. I was just bored. And it just got really repetitive. Like I said, I love the mixed media element. I don't think it did this book any favors. And then, like I said, she purposely leaves that out, and I just didn't enjoy this. I was bored with it. It took me way longer to read than it should have. Um, and I'm not really sure. I can't say without completely spoiling it, but I'm not really sure how I feel about the specific thing that is in here, like that twist at the end. Like, obviously I kind of figured it out beforehand. I didn't necessarily know the exact characters that were involved. I had an idea. But yeah, there's something specific that's like kind of medically related, and I'm not sure that I was the biggest fan of that either, but it was okay. And I think if you're more into that type of story, you probably enjoy it more than I did. And then let's see, we had 6 3-stars, so not too terrible. The first one was extra for DeckofTBRathon, and I did random letter. I pulled a 6, so this was only worth 3 points. I got the random letter of D, and so I went with The Tower Treasure, which is the first book in the Hardy Boys series by Franklin W. Dixon. And I actually did a vlog with this and the second book in the Hardy series, and then the first 2 books in the Nancy Drew series. I will link that down below as well in case you missed it. But yeah, this first one, it just felt kind of disjointed. It didn't really feel like it flowed well, or the beginning of the book really went well with the rest of the story and such. It was fun. I did enjoy it. The Hardy Boys have like this big group of friends, and so there was a lot of names kind of thrown at you that wasn't necessarily, especially with as small of a book as it was. But it was fun. I did have a good time with it. It just wasn't my favorite. And so yeah, in this first one, you either have the mystery of some thing that was stolen from these old towers. And so they're trying to discover what's going on there. So there's that one. And then we have the next Hardy Boy one, which was The House on the Cliff, again by Franklin W. Dixon. This one I did enjoy a little bit more than the first one. I think the flow of it was better. And you basically had the smuggling ring, and their dad's investigating the smuggling ring, and there's this house on the cliff that might be a part of it, and so they're kind of trying to help their dad, and their dad ends up going missing, and so they're trying to figure out what's going on there. So I do think it worked better. I just don't like the huge friend group that is involved with helping the Hardy Boys. Then we have the next one, which was also an extra for DeckofTBRathon. It was another 6, and so another 3 points. I got the random letter of F. And so for this one, I chose The Thief Lord by Cornelia Funk. And this one was fun. I did enjoy it. I don't think the message of the book was necessarily the best, because basically it's about this group of children, and they're all runaways basically, I mean, some of them don't have a home, but like the two brothers, which are the main characters, have run away because their aunt is trying to separate them. They want their aunt and uncle, they want the younger brother, but they are not interested in the older brother at all. They want to send him off to boarding school, so they run off to Venice, which I love the setting of this one. So you're in Venice, and they run off because their mom used to tell them stories of Venice, and then they meet this group of kids that are homeless, and so they take up with them. But then you have the thief lord, who is basically the leader of the group, even though they're like, there is no leader of the group. He's basically the leader and kind of instructs them, and he calls himself the thief lord, and he thinks he presents himself as this thief, but he's hiding a secret of his own. And then they kind of get hired by this guy to get an object, and things kind of progress from there. I did like the writing overall. Like I said, I just don't think I necessarily love the message of the book. Like, oh, your life is hard, so run away from it. I don't think that's necessarily a good message for kids. And it would have, I can understand like the brothers running away, but the other characters, some of them, like, okay, yes, that makes sense. But mainly like the thief lord, his part in it, it was like, okay, come on now. So I will say I did like the adults in this. Some of them were okay. There were parts where it's like, come on, act like an adult with these kids. But I did like some of the adults and their presence in the story itself. But yeah, just a 3-star for me. Didn't fully love it. Then we have this one, which I pulled a 9, and so it was 5 points because it was a building on the cover. And this was also part of my game, and it was the Mickey Mouse game, and so it was classic Disney. And so for this one, I went with The Wishing Spells, which is book 1 in the Land of Stories by Chris Colfer. And you can see the castles, and so that's the building on the cover. And this one, I enjoyed it, but the writing really wasn't the best. Like some of kind of like the similes or metaphors that he's using to describe things didn't really make a lot of sense, and I did see some like low reviews that mentioned that, and that was a big problem for them. Like at one time he's like use this, like a Tyrannosaurus Rex, a rabid Tyrannosaurus Rex about to pounce, and that didn't really make a lot of sense. And so yeah, like some of the things, and they were like way over the top, like to be as like descriptive and over the top as possible, but then there was no depth, so he was overly using like these descriptions and like these similes or metaphors, but then the rest of the writing was really flat and you didn't really get any description, and he really relied on narrative, on dialogue between the characters, and it did kind of smooth out a little bit towards the end. But yeah, the writing was really rough. But I did enjoy the story overall. I like that fairy tale aspect. And so basically you have these two twins, and they go through this portal in a book and find themselves in the land of stories, and they end up going on this kind of scavenger hunt, trying to collect these items so they can make a wish to get home. And so they meet some fairy tale characters along the way while they're trying to gather these items. There's the big bad wolf pack that are kind of hunting them, and then other dangers and such. Yeah, the story itself was fun. The writing was rough, but I hope it smooths out the farther into the series I go, because I definitely have all of them and I do want to read them all. So there's that one. Then this was the big accomplishment, because I've been working on this since November of last year, so it's almost been a year. I think 9 months. And so this one originally was for a bookworm, and it was page number chosen by dice or die, and I got in the 700s. And I went with the Iliad and the Odyssey. I did finish the Iliad, I think, in May, and then I read part of the Odyssey in June. Didn't touch it in July, and so the beginning of August, I was like, I'm finishing this sucker, and so I finished it. The very beginning, this was my first read of the month, and I got it finished. I did really enjoy it. So I remember reading the Odyssey in high school, and it has really, really stuck with me. And so I really wanted to read it again. The Iliad was rough. Like, the Iliad part of it was really, really rough. I did enjoy the Odyssey part of it, but it gets really repetitive at times. And the whole so-and-so, son of so-and-so, wasn't as bad in the Odyssey as in the Iliad, but it's still there, and it gets repetitive. And the only part I really truly enjoyed was Odysseus's journey. The beginning of it, when it's his son, I didn't particularly enjoy, and then the end with the suitors, that was a little bit of a slog. Again, kind of got repetitive. But I do really like the story of this, and I'm so glad I read it. But it was kind of dense and kind of rough to get through, and so that's why I only gave it a 3-star overall. And plus, in combination, I kind of rated the Iliad and the Odyssey separate. On Goodreads, I rated them together. Goodreads and Storygraph, I rated them together. But really, the Odyssey, even because of that repetitive nature, I ended up just giving it a 3-star. As much as I do love it, it's kind of hard to read for sure. So there is that. And then the last 3-star was an extra one, and this was the group read. I participate in Tales from Two Trails, which is Kim from Expedition Through Pages, her game, and it was The Battle, and I was on Team B, which was Team Elephants, and Kim was the leader of that team. And then we have the Pirates, which her mom, Julie, was the leader of. And so the group read for Team B was The Dry by Jane Harper, and so I read this one, and this one, I enjoyed it all right. It just wasn't my favorite. Like, there's nothing really like horrible about it. It just wasn't my favorite, and it really wasn't all that rememberable to me either. I did like the drought aspect of this. So basically, you have a special agent, and he goes home back to his hometown for one of his like really close friends' funerals. They've kind of been a little bit estranged, and haven't been in touch as much. He's kind of the town outcast. Something happened when he was younger, and so he's kind of the town outcast. And it's kind of going back and forth, and there's secrets from the time before. And then the funeral is basically his friend. It appears that he killed his family and then killed himself, but there's more to it than that. And so the parents are like, can you help and discover more? And he starts working with the local police and such. And there's this drought aspect as well. And so yeah, there were just some things that I didn't fully love about it, like especially the connection to the past, and the way that kind of played out. There's just some things I didn't love, but overall it was fun. It just wasn't amazing or anything like that to me. So there is that. Then we had 4 4-stars, which is always fun. The kind of bottom of the barrel is Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. This was a reread for me. Again, another one I read in high school, and it's kind of stuck with me. And rereading it, I still really enjoyed it. Obviously, there's some things that are kind of dated. That I didn't love, but for the time period it's set in, it's like, okay, that's cool. My thing is kind of with the woman. And so you have George and Lenny, and they're kind of drifters and workers and such, and so they get hired on, and George is a little bit slow. and doesn't always know his own strength and such, and so they tend to get into some trouble, and so they end up on this ranch as workers, and the boss's son has a new wife, and she's kind of presented as like this harlot, always like kind of flirting with the other men, trying to get together with the workers and such, and always away from her husband. She doesn't even have a name, and just kind of the way she was presented was just like, really? Like, and I think it could have been done different, and still told the same story. And so I just really couldn't, because of like her role and such and the way she was presented, I couldn't give it a full 5 stars. But I do really love the story, and I think the way George is, or no, Lenny, sorry, George is the small one, Lenny is the big one that is a little slow. I think with that lower IQ, and not knowing his own strength, I really think that is done pretty tastefully and pretty much in a realistic manner. Yeah, there's some, where, George is calling him, crazy, and they're kind of getting harassed and such. But overall, I think that aspect was done. It was just the way the woman was portrayed and kind of her role in everything that happened. That was just a little bit of a shame. So there's that one. And then the next 4-star, and that was for my genre-a-thon, because it was either a required read or an informative read, and of course genre-a-thon is my readathon, and each month we're either doing a different genre or kind of genre adjacent prompt. And so I read that one for my required reading from school, and then this next one was for my informative read because they were both so short. I wanted to read one for each. This next one also worked for DeckofTBRathon. I pulled a 2, which was related to your last read. And so at the time when I pulled my cards, my last read was from June, and it was The Devil in the White City by Erik Larson. And so I did same color, and I got 3 points for this. And I went with Helen Keller, The Story of My Life. The black background is what I was going with for the same color. And so yeah, this one was interesting. I really enjoyed learning more about her. My thing with this one, the reason it didn't get 5 stars, and it's always kind of hard to rate an autobiography or biography because it's literally about this person's life. But in this case, I would love to learn more about her disability and how, like, the process of how she learned things, where she kind of skims over that. Like, she does explain, like, later on, like, the hand signing and how she would read the hand signing. She does explain a little bit later on, but that's not till later on. So you're going through the whole book and she's talking about this, and it was really hard to picture what she was talking about and how that worked. And so I would have loved to see more of that, more of her struggles learning with her disability. But she's really a positive person. And so, like, you see some of her struggles when she gets into like college and such, and not getting the accommodations and such, but it's just I would have liked to see more of that, instead of like this positive light, and it's just more about like her childhood and not necessarily the disability aspect of it. And also she wrote this when she was 22, and it's like she had a lot of life after that, and I wish she had written this later in life and not at 22. I think I would have enjoyed seeing more of life after college and working and such. I wanted more of that, and so that's why it just kind of got 4 stars instead of 5. It's just I needed more. I needed more from it, but it's really interesting, and it's amazing, like how much she accomplished, like just in general, not even being blind and deaf, just in general. Like she learned so many different languages, and it's just like wow, wow. So yeah, really, really interesting on that one. Then the next one was a rollover. It was Autism Reads, again by Christina, an autistic reader. It was the choice for July, and I didn't get to it. And that was How to Stop Time by Matt Haig. And this one, I don't know. I read The Midnight Library and I kind of had similar feelings. I really like the vibe of everything. There's just something about Matt Haig's writing that I just don't fully connect with. And that was the case here. And so basically, you have this man, and they're not immortal, they just age very, very slowly. And so they age normally until about puberty, and then they age very, very slowly. And so it takes hundreds of years to see like any sort of aging changes at all. Um, and so there's kind of this like secret society of people like him, and it's run by this one guy, and that the guy kind of blackmails them into things, and they're only allowed to stay in a place for so long, and yada yada. And he does have a daughter, and so this guy is supposed to be helping him find his daughter. And so in the meantime, he ends up going back to London, and he starts working at a school, and there's like this musical component and this history component. He's like a history teacher, but he also really likes music as well. And then it's kind of reflecting on his past as well, so it's kind of going back and forth from past to present. And he meets a woman while he's teaching that he falls in love with, and he obviously fell in love before and had a daughter, but that's one of the rules. You're not supposed to form any sort of attachments or anything like that. And so the premise of this was really interesting. He has this dog. I of course love anything with a dog. There's just something, and I don't know what it is, but I just don't fully connect with the writing. But the vibes of the books are really, really cool, and I did really enjoy this one. I couldn't fully connect to it for whatever reason. And then the last one that was a 4-star was the first book in the Nancy Drew series, and that's The Secret of the Old Clock by Carolyn Keene. And yeah, I enjoyed this one. I just didn't fully love it. And so basically, there's this old clock. There's this will that's missing. And so Nancy's father is a lawyer, and so she's trying to help find this old will, because there's a lot of families that were supposed to get something when this man died that are really, really struggling. And there's this more well-off family that inherited everything, and it was like, but he promised us there has to be another will. And so Nancy kind of goes and starts exploring and trying to find this will. So again, I really enjoyed it. I don't, just wasn't a 5-star for me, for whatever reason. Then we had 6 stars. And so bottom of the barrel is the other Nancy Drew book, which was book 2, and that is The Hidden Staircase, again by Carolyn Keene. I just really like this one. And this one, there's kind of this house and it's being haunted. So Nancy, it's her friend's like great aunt or something. And so she's like, I'll help. And so they go there and they're trying to discover who the ghost is. And so there's kind of that spooky supernatural element, but Nancy knows like it's not really a ghost, it's a person. And so she's convinced there's a hidden passageway. And so she's trying to find this hidden passageway. And in the meantime, there's like the railroad, and people's lands are being bought up, but one of the guys goes missing and his never got like fully notarized or whatnot. And so there's like a lawyer who's, like saying there's a threat to Nancy's father, and then Nancy's father goes missing. And I really, really enjoyed this one. I will say that this one, the only thing is, I think the end was a little bit rushed, but otherwise, like, I really enjoyed this one, and so I ended up giving it 5 stars. If you want to know, like, my fresh thoughts on these books, definitely check out the vlog I did, Hardy Boys versus Nancy Drew. Again, I'll link that down below, but yeah, that was the first 5-star. Then we had the next one, and this was, I pulled a king, and so I did get 5 points. It was a rarely read genre. And for that one, I went with Barbarian's Taming by Ruby Dixon. This was also part of the game, and it was Lilo and Stitch, and it was alien character. And of course, this is about aliens. So, in this one, if you don't know what the Ice Planet Barbarians is, this is book 8. But basically, these women, they're getting sex trafficked by aliens, and they're having ship trouble and drop them off on this ice planet where these big blue aliens are. And so the big blue aliens end up rescuing these women, but in order to survive on the planet, they have to get the symbiont, which is a Qui. And so once they have their symbiont, then their symbiont resonates with whoever their mate is. And so that way they can, have kids and continue to produce and such. And this one, I really like the ones where the resonance doesn't play a part until later on. I found I enjoy those ones more because the resonance, it does get a little redundant and a little annoying, I'm not gonna lie. And so I really like the ones where that is later on. And so you have that with these two. And he's looking for like a mate, even if they don't resonate. Like he's like, if we sleep together, we're gonna be mates. And she's like, no, I just want to have fun. And she has a sister who's deaf, and she's kind of feeling a little lost because her sister is doing really well on this planet, and she's not. She's not fitting in. She's really struggling to connect with the aliens and the other women, because her and her sister get rescued after the initial women. And so she's really, really struggling. And then he is exiled from the tribe at this point because he tried to kidnap her sister, and force resonance. So he's exiled, and then they kind of start forming a friendship. I really like this one. I think the rest of them have been more 3, 4 stars. I can't remember if I've given any of them 5 stars. This was a 5-star though. I thought the plot of this one was a little better. It wasn't just, smut. It was, and there is a plot. Like, there is a plot to the series story as well. But this one's a big event happens, and it just really up the stakes to it, made it a lot more interesting to me. And then they discover something which I really loved. And so yeah, I just really enjoyed this one in and of itself. And you didn't have that resonance playing a part at all. And so I enjoyed that as well. So this one got 5 stars. There's that one. Then this one was an extra one as well for the TBR-athon. So this was the one that when I got an ace. So the ace was a host pick, and basically what they were doing is they were doing shorts throughout the month. And then they would pick a card, and that would be, you would look at the short, whatever card that was, then you would choose your book based on those prompts. But I don't really like watching shorts, and so Becca had like a pile of possibilities video, and this book was in that video, and I was like, hey, can I use that for the ace? And she's like, yeah, it's fine. So this one, she was doing, pile of possibilities for the different cards, and this one was for king, which was genre, and so I did host's favorite genre. So this one was worth 3 points, and I did Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. This is one of the books she showed. Yeah, this was just extra. I had found this at a thrift store, and I wasn't really interested in the series. I've obviously seen a lot of people talk about it, but I wasn't really all that interested in it. And I had found this at a thrift store, and then she had showed it, and it worked for that prompt, and I was like, I have that book, so let's go with that one. I love this one. Like, I can see the main male character in this is kind of grumpy sunshine. But the main male character is a little bit toxic. I mean, he's like 42 or something like that. Like, he's older. He's an older main male character. But he's like stuck on being a bachelor, like a lifelong bachelor. Like, he has it in his head that that's what he needs to be. And so there are just some things that he's a little bit toxic in, but I love the town. I love the premise of this. So basically you have, what is her name? Naomi. And she has a twin sister named Tina, and Tina calls her and is like, I need your help. and Naomi was supposed to get married, and she's basically a runaway bride and then runs off to go help her sister, and she learns she has a niece, and her sister basically abandons this niece and steals from Naomi like it's classic good twin, evil twin. And so she's stuck with this niece, and her sister has stolen her car, money, like laptop, like everything, and she's stuck with this niece. And so, what's his name? What is his Knox? Knox. Sorry, I'm horrible with names. So Knox is like a business owner, like he owns partnership in like a local barber. He has this bar, and he hates Tina. And so initially he thinks Naomi's Tina. He's like, no, like you need to leave. And then he's like, oh, okay, like you're her twin and whatever. And he kind of ends up helping her out, finds her a place to live, and then she ends up working in his bar, which initially he doesn't want her to work in his bar and such. And then they start developing a relationship. But I really liked like the family dynamic and like Naomi having to get to know this kid, this niece she didn't even know about. There's really great friendships. This small town component, like that was a lot of fun. Like I just really enjoyed the community of this book, even though I didn't fully love Knox and Naomi together, especially Knox because he is a little bit toxic. But yeah, and there's a little bit of suspense aspect to it too with Tina and what's going on with her, and then something very suspenseful kind of happens at the end. And I just really enjoyed this, and I ended up getting the next two for my birthday. Because I was like, I really want to continue the series. And so I was like, hey, next time I go to the grocery store, I know they have the other two. Like, it's my birthday, so I ended up getting that as part of the groceries. So there is that. The next one is the one that took me all month to read. And so this was for Jack, and it was worth 5 points because it had a color in the title. It was also part of my game, and that is Anastasia and its memory loss. And this one, Chunky Boy, was the fourth and last book in the Otherland series by Tad Williams. This is Sea of Silver Light, and I tabbed it out. Roughly 50 pages. Some of them were closer to like 60, 70 pages. Some of them 40 pages. But I tried to do about 50 pages, but just wherever the chapters ended, and it worked out. In this series, there is a character in here that does have memory loss. Like, he's completely has amnesia initially, and then he starts remembering a little bit. But even in this one, he's still discovering more. Like, he doesn't fully remember. And these are dense, but they are so good. So basically, there's virtual reality in this world, and these kids are going into comas. And so Rini is one of the main characters, and she goes into the network and trying to discover what happened to her brother. And then she has this African bushman who works with her, and I love those two together so much. And then there's a bunch of other characters that come in and play a part as well. And this is really a journey. Like, you are taken on a journey. They're thick, they're dense, and you are taken on a journey with these. And so yeah, but Rini and Zabu are my favorite characters. I absolutely love them. But then you also have like Orlando and Fredericks, who are like two teenage characters. Like this German woman, this French blind woman. So it does have a disability rep there as well. And then there's like some characters on the outside that aren't in the network, and there's like a secret brotherhood, Grail Brotherhood, that are create a network within virtual reality, and they're basically trying to become immortal. And then there's another secret society, the Circle, which is trying to stop them. And so there's a lot of dynamics. It pulls heavily from like fairy tales, Egyptian gods, mythology. There's the last book, they were going to Troy. This one had a lot of nursery rhymes in it and such, and so it pulls a lot from that as well, which makes it a lot of fun. But they are dense and they are a time commitment. so worth it. Like, I'm so glad I read the series. It's definitely gonna stick with me. And the writing is so well done. I was telling my husband there's one part where the network's kind of failing, and so it's just blank, and they're walking and walking and walking and trying to get somewhere. And that's multiple chapters. He does break it out because you're following different storylines, like different character storylines, and they all play into the story itself. But it's still, that would get really repetitive, you would think. It doesn't. Like, you do feel like you're trudging along with them and trying to get out of this blankness, but it doesn't feel repetitive at all. Like, absolutely love this series. If you don't mind the time commitment, I would highly recommend this, even if you're not a big like virtual reality sci-fi person, because I'm not. Still really, really enjoyable. Next, we had an 8, and I did get 5 points for this, and I used it to finish a series. There's only the 2 in this series, and this is a prequel, but it did come out after the first one, and that was Bookshops and Bonedust by Travis Baldree. And this one was for my character pick, which I had Pooh Bear. So this was part of the game as well. I had Pooh Bear, which is a classic or a comfort read, and these are cozy fantasy and perfect for a comfort read. I think I gave Legends and Lattes a 4-star, if I'm remembering right. I really enjoyed it. I didn't love it like everybody else did. Had a really good time. I did enjoy it. This one though, like, hit all the marks. And so basically, Viv is an orc. And in Legends and Lattes, she decides she's done with the orc life and she wants to open a coffee shop. In this one, it's a prequel. And so she's just kind of getting started as a mercenary and is part of this group that is hunting down this necromancer, and she gets badly injured. And so they leave her behind in this small seaside town. And so she's there recovering, and there's this little bookshop that's run by a Radican. And so she ends up going in there. The Radican starts recommending books for her, and then she starts helping the Radican out with the bookshop because it's really struggling. And then there's also a bakery down the way, and so there's like baked goods, and then they have a little bit of a romance between her and the bakery's owner. And then there's still that necromancer, and that's still a threat as well, and so that comes into play as well. And it's just so cozy, but then you also have that spooky element. I love Pot Roast here. So cute. He's like a dog owl thing. And then there's also like this skeleton that's like a servant, basically. And I loved, his name is Satchel. Like, really, really enjoyed this one. Like, the vibes of it, the setting, like, it was just perfect. So there is that one. And then the last book, which is my last read of the month, and this was Book Talk pick, and I think it was Jessica on Book Talk. Let me see. I gotta go back to the previous month because that's where we did it. Let's see. Jessica on TikTok, yeah. So I'll try to link that below if I still have the information for that. And this one I pulled a queen, and so for 5 points I needed another physical book, and that is Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. I love this so much. I just love everything about it. So I read The Assassin Blaze, which is the collection of prequels to this, and really loved it. And I wasn't planning on reading Sarah J. Maas at all. I tried ACOTAR. I wasn't a fan of it, but I found The Assassin's Blade at a thrift store, and I was like, why not? I also got this one used. And yeah, this hits everything for me. And so basically you have Selena, and she is an assassin, but she ends up in jail, and she's there for a year, and then she gets pulled out by the prince, and basically the king is having a competition to find the king's champion, which is basically an assassin for the king to get rid of his enemies and such. And so the prince decides he wants her as his champion. And so there's this competition element, but there's also something dark and evil in the castle that's killing off competitors. So that plays a part in it. And then there's a love triangle, which that part, like, it never really comes to fruition, her relationship with either guy, really. But that does play into it. Like, you definitely see those connections and those bonds being built. And she befriends a princess from one of the conquered kingdoms, because the king is basically conquering the continent and such. And there's like a queen from the past. Like, there's a lot, and it's really, really cool, and I cannot wait to continue the series. So this is definitely my favorite of the month, and it was the last read of the month, so it was a nice way to end the month for sure. So those are all the books I read. Of course, we're not done yet, because I do have my top 3, and my top 3 does not necessarily correspond with star rating. It's just the ones that had the biggest impact. So the top spot for my top 3 goes to Sea of Silver Light, which is the final book in the Otherland series by Tad Williams. I really like the childhood and the nods to childhood stories, mythology. Like, you have, Alice in Wonderland, nursery rhymes, you have literary nods. I liked all that. Like, I really enjoyed that aspect of the story. Zabu and Rini are couple goals for sure. Like, they start off like just friends, and I marked something and I forgot to read it to you when I was talking about this book. But this just epitomizes like their relationship. And so they're separated, and Rini's basically like dissolving because she's in like the ether, which is the operating system, and again it's dying, and so she's kind of like dissolving, and Zabu finds her. Um and it's just, they find each other, and so she ends up opening and feeling him, and then it says, um, did we make love? And it says, it does not matter, he sighed and laughed. I do not know. I think we were made of love. And it's just, oh, I just loved when they found each other, and that whole scene, how it played out. Like, those two are awesome. And you have other, like, characters that have their little relationships as well, but those two are just so wonderful together. The immersive aspect, like I said, it's a journey, and you really feel like you're going along with these characters. You're stuck in this virtual reality with them, but it never gets repetitive. But you really feel like you're right there. It's very immersive, and I really like the found family aspect. So, they really come together. So many people are coming together to stop this brotherhood, and they're all kind of in it together, and there is high stakes. Like, they can die in this virtual reality, and so the way they bond, they really do form a family in the system, and I just really like that found family aspect. The number 2 spot goes to the Odyssey. The influence, like, I remember it from high school, and it's really stuck with me, and it influences a lot of different things, and so you do see it around, and so just like it spans so long. Like, it's a classic for a reason. I love the journey aspect. Like, that's my favorite part, is when Odysseus is on his journey. I absolutely love that. The different stops he makes, and the kind of trials and tribulations he faces. His determination, like, he keeps going. He keeps fighting. He keeps going. He makes it home. And then I personally think Odysseus has kind of a lack of arrogance, and you see that, like, the gods warn him of certain things, and he follows the gods' warnings, where some of his men don't. They're a little bit more arrogant, and they think they know, and it's to their ruination, and so I personally, like, he does have some arrogance, but I personally think there's a lack of arrogance there as well, that allows him to listen to advice and do follow that advice instead of getting in his own way, and that allows him to get home. So I really like that. And then the third spot goes to Bookshops and Bonedust. I just loved it so much. I like the seaside small community. I really like that setting. Like, it was a vibe for sure. The books and the baked goods being part of the story, it just made it so cozy. It was perfect. The necromancer, because that added kind of a stake to it. I really like that component, and her trying to figure out certain things and figure out how to stop this necromancer. And then Pot Roast and Satchel, of course, because they're two awesome companions and I absolutely love them. So that is it for my wrap up, as long as always. But I read a lot of books and it takes time to talk about. If you stuck around, thank you so much. Please let me know down below if you've read any of these, if you're interested in reading any of these, what your favorite book from August was. I would love to know that. If you don't want to comment anything, but you do still want to help support the channel and just let me know you're watching, you can always leave a rabbit or any type of animal emoji down in the comments below. I'm going to go ahead and leave you guys here. Happy reading, everyone. Bye.